Hey there everyone and welcome to some more Tower Heroes level guides. In this video we're going to look at Defender 3 to 6. So this is for the Defender tokens and it's all about Defenders. So that's kind of what we're going to be really focusing in on this video, is how to use the Defenders in these battles. As always, the first kind of battles I've tried to use lower level heroes, and the later ones it's kind of like, we have to use stronger heroes. So starting off with Defender 3, looking at this here, you can see there are spikes, and one of the things in the game is you have these spike traps, and basically put a defender behind the spike trap and it forces the enemies to stay on there, and it will then periodically damage the enemies, and it's pretty high damage, so it's worthwhile doing. So there are 3 rows here which the enemies come in on: the top, the middle and the bottom, and each one of them has a spike trap. However, trying to put down a defender on the top row, I found there's not much point, because at the beginning you have enemies come in on both the top and the middle, and it's better to just put Edwin where I've put Edwin. Edwin is just ideal for this. He's a water damage dealer, they're fire enemies, he just does a really good job. So what I found is actually kind of better to just create this little area in the middle of the map where you put down your heroes, you put a healer on them, and you just kind of kill the enemies as they come into there. So you don't worry about the top spike trap, you just build it like this. So let's go into the level. You can see my heroes are all Evo 1, I only use low level heroes for this, and low star heroes for this, and you'll see with the technique. We start off with Edwin. So enemies come in pretty rapidly on the top and the middle, so trying to cover both of them is just kind of unrealistic. So it's better to put Edwin at this point where he's going to catch both of them, both of those rows as they come in. And then you can actually use the spike trap here with Felwyn at the bottom, blocking them at that spike trap. So like I said, I'm not going to bother putting anything on the top. So the next hero to place is going to be, if I can remember which one it is, oh, it's Velka. Okay, Velka's not ideal here because she's nature and there are fire enemies. However, she does a good enough job. I can't remember if I had Hail at this point, or whether I purposely wasn't using Hail because Hail would perhaps be, a bit strong. I wanted to prove that it's possible with Velka. But anyway, so we've got a defender for that middle spike trap, we've got one for the bottom. Now it's time to put a healer down, and then it's a case of kind of supporting where Edwin is. So Edwin's going to attack enemies that come on where Velka is. So he's going to cover her quite nicely, but he's the only one defending from the top. So Silver's going to help there, Canos is also going to help, and then I've put another melee attacker down behind Edwin, so he's really secured. So now all 3 of the paths are secured nicely. It doesn't look like Felwyn's covered so well, but Silver's going to help out there, so that's going to get the job done. So now we get a couple of big enemies, a couple of big enemies, and the middle row, all those enemies there, but we've got set up for that, so they died quite quickly, and being stuck on the spike traps definitely helps out. It chips them down quite nicely. So that's the big enemies done. I don't think there's too much more to be worried about. There are loads of enemies in this battle for some reason. 81 is a bit ridiculous. And it's kind of like you reach the point where you've got all your heroes down. I mean, look at my CP, I've got like 60. I could easily sell them and place other heroes instead. But actually, okay, there's a pretty big final wave where you use the skills and take down those enemies. But anyway, that was Defender 3. Not too bad at all. Moving into Defender 4, I'm sorry about the black on the screen. There's also it for Defender 5. There was just, at the time I recorded, there was a bit of a visual bug. It's the problem that you get when you're beta testing, is there's just some really nasty bugs that come in that look horrible. Yeah, anyway, so this, I don't actually like my technique for this battle. I would like to say that you probably should use defender heroes. I went for melee attackers. This battle is really difficult right at the beginning. There's a lot of enemies that come just suddenly right there at the beginning on the top and the middle. You can't see so clearly, but ultimately what this map is there's 3 rows in the middle which enemies come along. The top row has enemies feeding into it from 2 different entrance points, so there's quite a lot coming on the top row, and that's the problem right at the beginning. But ultimately you need to cover these 3 rows, and having a healer down there to help what you have set up. Also a range attacker. You could put a range attacker at the bottom in the bottom right, looking up. That's the kind of support you can give. Otherwise you've got room to kind of play with whatever you like. You can put different melee hero combinations down in the middle. So I went for range attackers. You can also see levels wise, my Carl is Evo 2. Yeah, you need some slightly stronger stuff for this. It's it's probably one of the harder battles to jump into, especially after Defender 3 is so easy. So you'll see there are 4 enemies which come in at the beginning. Now Defenders block 3 enemies, so I think it's possible to put a Defender down there and to kill them off, but it's probably going to take a while doing it, and so you'd want to then support it with a melee attacker or something. So I went with Roland, and Roland carried me. Yeah, like I said, I don't like this technique. I think you can do a better job with it using Defender heroes, but these guys, you know, they're big beefy 5 stars that are good, so they took down those enemies really nicely. And then from here I use more of a kind of like the kind of technique which I'd expect to use, where I'm using some nature heroes, putting Velcro at the bottom there, Segas at the top to help support things. And yeah, they're going to do a good job. Roland is covering all 3 of the rows, so he's just going to carry me through this. Yeah, if you don't have Roland, I mean, just hope you get Roland. I say that in basically every video I make on these level guides, is Roland is just very good for carrying you through things. But anyway, so now we've got a lot of enemies. This final wave is really tough. You haven't actually had that much set up for it, so make sure you've got quite strong heroes and everything to get through that. It's yeah, I can't give much more insight into that. I hope you're able to do it just fine. So Defender 5, this battle, one thing to note about it is it's got a very easy bottom row. So it's a very similar setup to what we had on the last time, where we got 2 points feeding into the top row. There are 3 rows in the middle there. Sorry, it's not the easiest screenshot to see things here. I've actually got a Lee Zen at the top there facing down, if you can tell that. But anyway, we've got these 3 rows we have to cover. It's going to be similar setup to last time. I actually used Defender heroes this time. I was like, I'm not going to use Roland. I think maybe the enemies are not weak to Roland. I can't remember. But yeah, the bottom row, you don't have to worry about so much. There's literally only a few enemies that come along there. I think like 4 or something. So you can focus on the setup up at the top. Put a good range attacker. I put Scarlet in here to cover those top 2 rows, and then put a little bit at the bottom to cover that. That's kind of the general idea of what we're doing here, and you can see I've got a healer there as well. So levels of my heroes, around about what I usually had for these, mostly Evo 1, I've got the 5 stars Evo 2, that kind of thing. So yes, nature enemies, that's why I didn't use Roland. So we start off with a Felwyn. Felwyn does a really good job of blocking the enemies here, and Felwyn does actually pretty damn good damage. So she takes out these enemies very nicely, doesn't take too much damage in the process. Put down a Velka, she's going to cover that row very nicely too. So these aren't the greatest damage dealers because they're defenders. So the next thing I place is Scarlet, who's going to cover both of these rows, help them out with a lot of the damage dealing, because otherwise they're just going to get chipped down and die off too quickly, and a healer will do that, but like, you also need to be able to kill off these enemies. I mean, this top row now, there's like 3 quite tough enemies there, and then 3 more coming in, or 2 more coming in, and then another 2 from the other bit. You know, Felwyn's got to take a lot here. That's also why I put Felwyn at the top and Velcro in the middle, because that top row takes the most heat, and Felwyn has the, you know, the elemental advantage that will make her do better in this battle. So, a few enemies at the bottom, but that was it. You can see we're actually almost near the end of this battle already. Scarlet did a really good job of taking down those enemies. She's does a lot here. So now we've got a sort of tougher final encounter, I think, with these bigger enemies. But the defenders do a good job with the healers on them. You know, they're just going to basically tank up those tougher enemies. So yeah, Defender 5, I think it's actually easier than Defender 4 for some reason. So now Defender 6, I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed coming up with the technique for it. I tried a few different techniques until I came up with this one, which I found was my favourite. And it might be my favourite because it lets Roland shine. Roland is just amazing in this battle. Yeah, if you don't have Roland, the way that you need to do this is basically put down your strongest water melee attacker, and perhaps support it with a second attacker, because what you'll have for the majority of this battle is just like continuously spawning fire enemies that like, they're spaced out a bit, but not very much, that if you can't kill them quickly, you're going to get overwhelmed. So a defender, you know, would block them, but like, you're not actually going to kill them fast enough. So interestingly, this is less about defenders, more about having some really like high damage output, and then also perhaps, you know, defending your melee attackers while they're doing the high damage output. There's also a couple of bits which are problematic. You can see at the top here, there's a big guy. There's also on the bottom row, some of that comes along, and that's quite difficult to manage when you've got stuff going on in the middle, and then you've got this bottom row that like all that happens on the bottom row is you get like some tough enemies coming in. So it's a bit awkward that you have to invest some stuff to actually deal with that bottom row when you've got the setup, the rest of the setup doing things on the other rows. But anyway, so let's move into the battle. You'll see I do slightly odd use of healing. I put a healer facing down when I actually need to heal something at the top, but that's just because I know how it's going to play out, and I gave him a healer later on. So we start with Roland, and Roland is just going to, do most of this battle for me. You can see there are 3 enemies that come in at the beginning. That's just a little taster of what's to come. Now they just keep on coming. So you get this endless supply of these fire enemies coming in. Oh, I say endless. It's ended, but there'll be more. And they come on this middle row as well as the top row. And so I put down, I'll do a little bit of a setup up at the top where I've got, if I can remember her name, I cannot remember her name, Chandra, I think. And then I've put Hale there. So they're, technically covering the top row. However, it's mostly going to be Roland killing them off. Roland is covering this middle row. Like I said, if you don't have Roland, you could put 2 melee attackers there, perhaps one which is like covering both the top and the middle, like if it's above Roland but facing down, that kind of thing. And Hale will tank the tougher enemies at the top. Now I put Felwyn a little hastily down at the bottom because I know she's going to be there, she's going to be needed later. You get this like overwhelming amount of dogs that come up. You need to have a setup for that, but like I said, if you've got Roland and then a melee attack above facing down, oh sorry, not Roland, but like another melee attacker, that should cover that pretty nicely. This is the tough bit at the bottom where I've put a range attacker down. I've also got the healer. You can see Felwyn was like getting hit a lot. It's really nasty there. And then you've got a second big enemy coming along. So you need to have a setup for that. Otherwise, you can see the setup I've got at the top, and that will deal with that whatever comes there. And then right at the end, there's a sneaky last few enemies that come on the left, which means basically sell stuff and then deploy some things on the left-hand side. I used Bruno, but use whatever you like. Basically, sell some stuff so you can afford to position some heroes on the left, because that's all you've got coming now. It's just those last few enemies for some random reason that they're there. Anyway, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in a video soon.